6 years ago, Alexander Cole, one of the city's most powerful millionaire CEOs, walked away from everything: his business, his home, and the woman who once loved him. He believed success demanded sacrifice, and he chose ambition over love. But fate had a cruel twist in store. When he finally returned, sharper, richer, and stronger than ever, he expected to find his empire waiting for him. Instead, he was confronted with a shocking truth. The woman he had left behind wasn't alone anymore. She stood proudly, with a little girl clinging to her side, his daughter. For 6 long years, she had raised their child without him, never asking for his help, never reaching out. And now, face to face, she looked into his eyes and said the words that shattered him. "I raised our daughter on my own." This was no ordinary reunion, this was the reckoning of a lifetime. The city had changed in 6 years. Towers had risen where old shops once stood, neon lights painted the skyline brighter than ever, and fortunes had shifted in ways no one could have predicted. Yet, for all the transformations outside, one thing remained the same: the name, Alexander Cole. To the business world, Alexander was a legend, a self-made millionaire CEO, the kind of man who turned struggling ventures into empires. Newspapers called him the Wolf of Commerce. His rivals hated him, his employees feared him, and investors worshipped him. But behind the polished headlines and flashy magazine covers, there was a truth Alexander had buried deep, a truth that now stood waiting for him as he returned from his 6-year absence. When he walked into the city once more, his presence drew attention instantly. His tailored black suit, his sharp jawline shadowed with a light beard, and his piercing gray-blue eyes commanded respect everywhere he went. People whispered his name in awe. Some wondered why he had disappeared for so long, others speculated about the empires he had quietly built overseas. No one dared ask him directly, but Alexander knew the real reason for his disappearance. 6 years ago, when he had been younger and hungry for success, he faced a choice: love or ambition. At that time, love had seemed like a weakness. He had been with Evelyn, a woman whose kindness steadied his restless heart, a woman who believed in him when no one else did. Yet, when opportunity knocked and an international expansion demanded his full focus, Alexander chose business over her. One argument turned into two, and two turned into a breakup. He left without looking back, at least, that's what he told himself. The truth was, he did look back. Many nights, lying awake in foreign hotel rooms, he thought of her smile, her laughter, and the way she once looked at him like he was more than just a man chasing wealth. But he buried those thoughts beneath contracts, meetings, and new ventures. He told himself he was doing it for the future, for a life where he would never be powerless again. Now, after 6 years, he was back, richer, stronger, more powerful than ever. He had everything he once dreamed of, yet he carried a strange emptiness. That emptiness deepened when he walked into a charity gala hosted in one of the city's grand halls. Chandeliers sparkled, waiters glided between tables, and wealthy men and women mingled with champagne glasses in hand. Alexander stood tall among them, radiating authority. But then he saw her, Evelyn. She hadn't changed in the way he feared she might. Her long brown hair still flowed softly past her shoulders, her dark eyes still carried that same spark of warmth. But there was something different, too, an air of strength, of quiet resilience. She wasn't the same young woman he had left behind. She had grown, matured, and carried herself with a new kind of grace. For a brief moment, Alexander felt his chest tighten. Memories flooded back, uninvited. The way she used to tease him about working too much. The nights they spent dreaming about a simple future together. The sound of her voice saying his name in a way no one else ever had. He almost took a step toward her. But then he noticed something that stopped him cold. At Evelyn's side stood a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6. Blonde hair tied neatly with a ribbon, wide eyes filled with innocence, and a small hand gripping Evelyn's dress as she looked curiously around the room. The resemblance was uncanny, so uncanny that Alexander's heart nearly skipped a beat. The little girl looked like him. He didn't breathe for a moment. He didn't blink. His mind screamed denial, but his heart whispered the truth he wasn't ready to face. Before he could gather himself, Evelyn's gaze met his. The room seemed to freeze around them. For a long, heavy moment, neither spoke. Then, with a steady composure, Evelyn walked toward him. The little girl followed, her curious eyes darting between the man and her mother. "Alexander," Evelyn said finally, her voice calm but layered with years of unspoken history. He opened his mouth, but words failed him. Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest, almost bitter smile. And then she said the words that shattered him. I raised our daughter on my own. The words cut deeper than any betrayal, sharper than any rival's attack. He felt his chest tighten, his hands tremble ever so slightly. His daughter, his little girl, looked up at him, tilting her head curiously, as though trying to recognize something familiar in his face. And in that innocent gaze, Alexander saw every year he had missed her first steps. Her first words, the laughter, the tears, all of it, gone. Her name is Amelia, Evelyn added softly, glancing down at the child with a protective hand on her shoulder. She's 6. And she's mine. Alexander swallowed hard, guilt washing over him like a tidal wave. Why? Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice rough, strained. Evelyn's eyes hardened. Because you made your choice, Alexander. You chose your empire. You chose ambition. And I chose her. Silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the soft chatter of guests in the distance. For the first time in his life, Alexander Cole, the man who never lost a negotiation, who never flinched under pressure, felt powerless. The little girl tugged at Evelyn's hand. Mama, who is he? Evelyn hesitated, her lips pressing together. She looked at Alexander, a storm of emotions in her eyes: anger, sadness, and something else he couldn't name. Finally, she crouched down to Amelia's level. He's someone I used to know, she said softly. Alexander's heart clenched. Just someone she used to know. Nothing more. As Evelyn straightened, she gave him a look that told him everything. She didn't need him, and neither did Amelia. They had built a life without him. And yet, standing there, Alexander realized that no amount of wealth or power could erase the truth. He had missed out on being a father, and that realization was only the beginning. The gala continued around them, music playing, laughter filling the air, champagne glasses clinking. Yet for Alexander, the world had gone silent. His eyes remained fixed on Evelyn and the little girl who bore his features, Amelia, his daughter. For years, he had commanded boardrooms, bent markets to his will, and walked with an aura of untouchable power. But now, a 6-year-old's innocent gaze reduced him to a man stripped bare of titles and wealth. He felt as though the marble floors beneath him were slipping away. Evelyn, sensing the storm within him, gently guided Amelia toward a quieter corner of the hall. She looked back at Alexander. If you want to talk, come tomorrow. My home. But don't come as a CEO. Come as a man who owes explanations. Her tone left no room for argument. Alexander nodded stiffly. For the rest of the night, he went through the motions of the gala, shaking hands, offering smiles, but his mind never left that moment. The image of Amelia tugging Evelyn's dress and asking, Mama, who is he? Replayed like a haunting echo. The next morning, for the first time in years, Alexander skipped work. His board members were shocked. His assistant left confused, but he didn't care. Dressed in simple clothes, no designer suit, no silk tie, he drove himself to the modest neighborhood Evelyn had written down. When he arrived, he expected a sense of bitterness, but instead, he was met with warmth. The small home had flower pots on the porch, drawings taped to the windows, and the faint laughter of a child inside. For a moment, Alexander stood frozen at the gate. This wasn't just a house. This was a home he had never built, a home he had abandoned without even knowing. When Evelyn opened the door, she wasn't dressed in glittering gowns or polished jewels like the women he often saw at high society events. She wore a simple sweater, her hair tied back, and an apron dusted with flour. She looked every bit as radiant as he remembered, only stronger. Come in, she said simply. Inside, Amelia sat at a small table, crayons scattered around her as she worked on a drawing. She looked up curiously, eyes lingering on Alexander. Again, her innocence pierced through him. Amelia, Evelyn said softly, this is Alexander. He used to be a friend. The word friend stung, but Alexander stayed quiet. He knelt slightly, offering a hesitant smile. Hello, Amelia. The little girl tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. Do I know you? She asked. Alexander swallowed hard. Not yet, he whispered. Evelyn's eyes flickered with something unreadable as she guided Amelia back to her crayons. Once, Amelia was busy. She turned to Alexander, arms folded. You wanted the truth, so here it is. She began to tell him everything. The night he left, she had discovered she was pregnant. At first, she had thought of reaching out. But when she remembered his final words that ambition mattered more than distractions, she made a choice. She wouldn't beg him to stay. She wouldn't chain him down. She would raise their child alone, no matter how hard it got. And hard it was. Evelyn spoke of long nights balancing 2 jobs, of rocking Amelia to sleep while fighting her own exhaustion, of crying silently when bills piled up higher than her paycheck. There were days she went hungry so Amelia wouldn't. There were moments when loneliness almost broke her. But through it all, she never regretted choosing Amelia. "She's my light," Evelyn said firmly, her eyes shining with fierce pride. "Everything I do is for her, and she's grown up happy, without needing your money or your name." Alexander's chest ached with every word. He had been in penthouses, sipping champagne, sealing million-dollar deals, while Evelyn had been in tiny apartments, sewing extra work late at night just to buy their daughter a winter coat. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice cracking despite himself. "You didn't want to know," Evelyn shot back. "You erased me from your life. You erased us." The accusation hit harder than any boardroom defeat. He had prided himself on control, on always knowing the cost of his choices. But here was a cost he had never calculated: a daughter who grew up without her father. Amelia wandered over then, holding up her drawing. "Mama, look, I drew a house with 3 people." She giggled, pointing at the stick figures. "That's me. That's you. And that's a man. He has the same eyes as me." Evelyn froze, her lips parting slightly. Alexander's throat tightened. The little girl didn't know. Yet her innocence painted the very picture they were trying to avoid. "That's beautiful, Amelia," Evelyn said softly, hugging her daughter tightly. Her eyes met Alexander's over Amelia's head, filled with a storm of anger, pain, and reluctant tenderness. After Amelia skipped back to her table, Alexander finally spoke. "Evelyn, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please, let me be part of her life. I've missed too much already. Don't shut me out now." Evelyn's gaze was cold but conflicted. "You don't get to walk back in like nothing happened. You can't buy 6 years with apologies. If you want to prove yourself, it won't be in days or weeks. It will take years. Years of showing up, of being there. Because Amelia doesn't need a millionaire CEO, she needs a father." Alexander nodded slowly. For the first time in his life, he accepted terms that weren't his own. That night, as he drove away, the city lights blurred before his eyes. He realized that no amount of success could erase the 6 years he had lost. But maybe, just maybe, he could spend the rest of his life trying to make up for them. Weeks passed since that first visit, and for Alexander, each day felt like a test he couldn't afford to fail. Gone were the days of marble floors and chauffeur-driven cars, at least when it came to Evelyn and Amelia. Here, in their world, his tailored suits and luxury watch meant nothing. What mattered was something he had never truly practiced before: consistency. The first time he offered to pick Amelia up from school, Evelyn hesitated. She studied his face, looking for signs of the man who had once left so easily. Finally, she nodded. "One chance. Don't be late." Alexander wasn't. In fact, he arrived early, standing nervously among the other parents. He felt out of place. Business tycoons didn't wait outside elementary schools. Yet when the doors opened and Amelia spotted him, her small steps slowed. Her eyes studied him again, cautious but curious. "You came," she said softly, almost in disbelief. "I promised," Alexander replied. She smiled then, the kind of smile that lit up her entire face. For Alexander, that moment was worth more than any contract he had ever signed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Alexander found himself doing things he had never imagined: attending school plays, helping with homework, learning how Amelia liked her pancakes cut into funny shapes. At first, she kept him at arm's length, treating him like a visitor in her life. But slowly, walls began to crumble. One night, after he read her a bedtime story, Amelia hugged him tightly and whispered, "Good night, Daddy." The word shattered something inside him. He left Evelyn's house that night with tears streaming down his face. A broken man learning how to heal, but trust with Evelyn wasn't as easy. She watched him carefully, never letting her guard down fully. "Amelia can love you," she said one evening after Amelia went to bed, "but I won't let her get hurt. If you ever disappear again, it will break her. And I will never forgive you." Alexander nodded. "I won't. Not again." Evelyn studied him, her eyes sharp yet softened by the smallest flicker of hope. It wasn't only Evelyn's trust he had to earn. The world too seemed eager to test him. Rumors spread through the business world when he was spotted at school fairs instead of boardrooms. Investors whispered that he had grown soft. Journalists speculated about the mysterious woman and child in his life. For the first time, Alexander didn't care. He had built empires, but this was the first time he was building something real. One evening, Amelia asked the question both adults feared. "Daddy, why weren't you here before?" The room fell silent. Evelyn looked down, bracing for the answer. Alexander knelt before his daughter, eyes glistening. "Because I made mistakes, Amelia. I thought work was more important than love. I thought success was worth more than family. I was wrong. And I'm sorry I missed your first steps, your first words, your birthdays. But if you'll let me, I'll never miss another." Amelia studied him with the seriousness only a child could hold. Then, she climbed into his arms and whispered, "Okay, but no more missing." He hugged her tightly, silently vowing to keep that promise. Months later, the moment of true redemption came. Amelia had a school recital, and she was terrified of performing. "What if I forget the words? What if everyone laughs at me?" she asked, clutching Evelyn's hand. Before Evelyn could respond, Alexander knelt down, holding Amelia's shoulders. "Then I'll be the loudest one clapping. Because I'll be proud no matter what." Those words gave Amelia the courage she needed. And when she stood on stage, scanning the crowd, her eyes found Alexander and Evelyn sitting together. For the first time, she performed with confidence, knowing she wasn't alone. After the recital, Evelyn stood beside Alexander, watching Amelia laugh with her friends. "She's happier," Evelyn admitted quietly. "I see it. You being here. It matters to her." Alexander turned to her, his voice low, "And to me. More than I ever thought possible." There was silence between them, heavy with unspoken history. Finally, Evelyn sighed. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you fully, but I can't deny Amelia deserves this. She deserves you. And maybe, in time, I'll believe you deserve her too." For Alexander, those words were not forgiveness, but they were a beginning, and beginnings were powerful. Years later, people would still whisper about the millionaire CEO who changed overnight, the man who went from boardrooms to bedtime stories. But for Alexander, the whispers didn't matter. What mattered was the sound of Amelia's laughter filling the home he had once abandoned. He had lost 6 years, but he was determined never to lose another moment. And as he sat on the floor of Evelyn's living room, crayons scattered around him, Amelia drawing another picture of 3 people in a house, Alexander finally understood. Wealth was not what you kept in banks. Wealth was what you held in your arms. And so, Alexander's journey reminds us of a powerful truth. Money, success, and status may open doors, but only love keeps them open. He learned it through pain, through loss, and through redemption that no empire is greater than the empire of family. If this story touched your heart, remember sometimes the most important battles are not fought in boardrooms but in living rooms, not with contracts but with promises, and not with wealth but with love. What would you do if someone you trusted walked back into your life after years of absence? Could you forgive them? Could you let them in again? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that family is life's greatest treasure. Because at the end of the day, love always wins.